standard manifestations that we look for in case of possession occurred in that house. Furniture moving around, pounding sounds, the hystericalness of the boy, the strength of the boy, speaking in other languages. It was just a stereotype possession case. We could look at some more of those slides. We'll show the mother and father.
Here's another article, I guess, on the possession.
Yes, that's Arne Johnson.
There in the left-hand corner there.
Yes.
Right. What's the next slide?
You know, if the judge had let us bring in our evidence, which were recordings, photographs, eyewitness accounts, and the priests. The priests were waiting outside of the courthouse in Danbury, Connecticut, to go into that courthouse.
To testify?
And testify that what occurred to this young boy and Arne Johnson was indeed diabolical possession. But I could understand the judge's feelings too.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to be known as the judge who allowed the devil made me do it case into his courtroom.
Right. Okay. I guess this is an article that talks about you.
The devil made him do it. And the devil did make him do it.
Oh, yeah, we were
Arne Johnson was under diabolical possession. He didn't know what happened for at least 2 hours. In that 2 hours, he had killed Alan Bono. This young man wouldn't hurt anyone or anything. You'd have to know Arne Johnson like we knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Very polite, a very good-living young man, very hard-working. He'd work until 5 o'clock, landscaping, cutting trees, have his supper, go to bed until 11. Then he'd get up and he'd stay up all night long, holding this young boy down.
He would have David sleep next to him so that the family, the parents, Judy and Carl Glotzel, this took a terrible toll on this family. You cannot believe the emotional and physical toll.
I always said that if a court would allow us to bring our evidence into this guy, that there is the lawyer, Martin Manella.
Yeah.
And he put his position in jeopardy as a lawyer by going in on this case. But he knew that the boy was possessed. He felt we could win the case, never knowing that the judge would not allow us to bring in our evidence. But Lorraine and I set a precedent in 1990 in which we did win a case where a woman was driven out of a house in Hebron, Connecticut that was haunted by ghosts. We would have won this case too, and Arne Johnson would have not gone to prison.
Now, is this one of the priests that was in the house?
That's the exorcist.
He was the exorcist.
Yes, he was, and he was very, very badly affected by this case.
Yeah, in what way?
Well, Tony, it was an all-night session at that house one night. All night we were up with the exorcisms and the praying. And it was that night, Tony, that I taught that little boy the guardian angel prayer, that angel of God, my guardian dear. I taught him how to say that prayer. And that seemed to give this child a certain amount of comfort. And we were really exhausted, tired.
But remember, the exorcist is attacked, not just while he's performing exorcism, but in his own rectory.
That's what I was just going to tell you. Now, we left there early morning. Father Virgilac wanted to get back to Norwalk because he was going to say Mass that morning, and his parents were going to be at Mass. He did not want them to know. He didn't want them to be concerned for him. And he had shared things with his sister, but he had not shared things with his dad, who, by the way, was chief of police.
Oh, really?
And so that morning...
Chief of police in Norwalk.
Yes.
In Norwalk.
Yes. Oh, no, not in Brookfield.
Okay. Now, do we have a picture of the Glotzels?
I think, yes, there they are. There's Judy and Carl Glotzel.
That's the mother and father of David.
That is after the boy was exorcised.
Both extremely good people and
jovial
very patient.
people. Jovial.
Mr. Glotzel there, as big he is, looks like Grizzly Adams, could not hold that boy down alone.
Oh, no, he couldn't hold him at all.
There'd be sometimes, as I said, 4 and 5 men that would have to hold this boy down.
Okay, let's get into that just a little bit if we could. Now, here's a picture. Here's a picture of him.
Yes.
What's he coming out of possession?
Okay,
he's crying, and he's holding on to his mother.
That is what he would do, Tony, all the time.
Would you say in your professional opinion, that he was possessed by a devil or a demon, or what would it be exactly?
He was possessed by devils.
By devils.
Yeah, I would
In fact,
say.
when they were spending the night at the Glotzel home, I went into my study and I called on the devil. I thought it was one devil, which they called the beast, to come to where I was at so I could bind the spirit of that devil so it wouldn't go back into the house.
Okay, what's that bind? What's that mean?
Binding of the spirit. The priests were casting out the devils of the house. I felt that the beast would then come to where I was and I would bind the spirit through that ritual. But Tony, that was one of the most frightening evenings of my life. There was not one devil, there were 43 of them.
43
which
devils.
came to me as a kaleidoscope, as if you were watching one horrible face after another. And remember, I was in that study by myself.
I was saying, what did you do? What happened? What did you do? If it was me, I think I'd have ran out. What did you do?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I was just stunned. I couldn't move. I was watching it happen very quickly. And as I watched it, it was like a kaleidoscope of horrible faces coming to me. I knew that I had no power up against this. I felt it was one devil, and which they called the beast. But when I seen over 40 of them, I knew that we were dealing with the hierarchy of the diabolical world. At that point, I gave it up, and I went out of the study.
Oh, so you did
I
leave.
left, yes, because I knew that I did not have any control over what was happening here.
Now, I was with the priest at the house during this. So in the morning, I came home with them when they were coming home. And I felt that Father Virgilak particularly needed some rest before he, and I wanted him to take a nap before he went home because he looked exhausted. Tony, if you ever seen these priests, you know how meticulous they are about their appearance.
Right.
Leaving this house in the morning, they looked like they were coming out of bath, which of course they were. But he related to me that day, coming home, how when he woke up this morning, that his pillow was soaked with blood.
Now, the blood that she's speaking of is called an apport through teleportation. This is meant to frighten the priests. It's meant to frighten us so that we would stop our investigation. But we understand and know the powers of devils. And fortunately for us, we have some type of protection, which I think comes from when I was a boy yet, the Blessed Mother, Padre Pio, whom we pray to all the time. And without this protection, this angelic protection, we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now.
This next slide, Ed, what is this of?
This is the convent where in Brookfield of St. Joseph's, where the first exorcism was performed, which was unsuccessful. It was at this time that I left the convent because nothing was happening and went back to the Brookfield farmhouse. And this is where the rocking chair was going back and forth, and I heard the growling sounds and the pounding sounds.
Now, Tony, I don't want you to think that that blood on the pillow was the priest, because it was not. That was not his own blood. He was not bleeding. That was an apport, something that had dematerialized at one point and reappeared at another point. That was, in this case, really meant to terrify him.
One of the frightening things that occurred to Arne and Debbie, they would sleep on the floor next to David. If he woke up, then they'd be there to control him. And what they seen and described was a bone-like hand that came up through the floor, green, and an arm. Now, again, these types of things are meant to frighten. Because when a person becomes frightened, they will throw off psychic energy into the atmosphere, which a negative force will use as a fuel to manifest itself more.
Okay, now where exactly did the exorcism take place? Oh, there's a slide right here. Is that the church?
Yes, it is, Tony. That's the church. And the doorway that you're off to the right, the basement, see, they now have a new, very beautiful church.
The church in...
That's the church in Brookfield.
That was the first church. There's another one there now.
There's another beautiful church, and it was down in that basement, which was adjacent to the school. Now, Tony, after the exorcism had been performed there, they knew they couldn't do it anymore. There was so much noise and so much violence during that exorcism that it was even heard in the elementary Catholic school.
Well, the doors in back of the church would open and close. The pews were actually moving, which are bolted down. Hymn books that were in the seats next to us flew off the seats. The boy broke away from two of us and attacked the priest.
So
Now, what is this next slide
I
of
wanted to
it?
show this. Oh, this is Debbie.
Debbie
with
and
Lorraine,
I, yes, that's
and
Debbie.
we're at the shrine in Brookfield right there. That's
Okay.
David's sister.
Right.
We would go
I
there
brought
a
a model
lot.
with me of a dinosaur here.
You did.
And this model dinosaur had just been completed by David, the young boy who was possessed. And if we could close in on that, as he finished with this, suddenly it started to walk on its own, of its own volition toward the family.
That plastic dinosaur started to walk.
This plastic dinosaur,
and
and a deep, gruff voice came out of it and it said, "Beware, you're all going to die." And you know, one time we were at the church there, we were showing a group of people where the exorcism took place, and a man was taking recordings. And on his recording, he got the same deep, gruff voice which said, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
Oh,
he
boy.
was, we were explaining, we were talking to a group, Tony, and this man was recording what we were saying about the Brookfield case when
Okay,
that had
so
occurred.
this case,
Now that animated, Tony.
that
It
walked.
actually
It
walked.
actually
That
walked.
walked.
Family.
It doesn't. The thing isn't movable like
You know,
that.
I seem to remember you speaking of a similar incident in the Amityville case. Is that true? Am I
That
thinking
was
of the
the
correct?
lion, the ceramic lion.
Yes, the
Now,
ceramic.
why would that
teleport.
happen? Is that just to scare everybody? Why would?
It's to frighten people. It's to frighten them, as I said earlier, because as you become frightened, you throw off this psychic energy. Devils, demons, evil spirits can use this as a fuel to manifest more phenomena. They need some kind of energy, and that's the energy.
And you know, David, the voices that he would hear when he was under possession, Tony, they would tell him things. For instance, they told him that Arne Johnson was going to fall out of a tree. And Arne did fall, but thank God, you know, he wasn't badly hurt.
And the beast, as they called him, also told the boy that at the end of the trial, the last day, the lights would dim down in the courtroom, and they did.
And
They did dim. So what was the outcome of that trial?
Well, the outcome was that Arne we couldn't use the defense of the devil made him do it, so I think it was manslaughter.
Yes, because
And,
he served very
Arne
little
got
time.
4 years, but I think he only did 2 years of that.
And
You couldn't keep a young man like this in prison for something he didn't do.
No, and his behavior was excellent. But Tony, him and Debbie were married in prison.
oh, they were.
They were.
They have a business together. They live
Today.
in Milford today.
They have
They're
two.
happy.
They have
They're-
2 sons.
They're normal. Everything's normal now.
Oh yes.
very normal.
Oh, they're
Now,
very
how about
normal.
David? Is David doing okay?
David works with his dad.
very normal, and
Yeah,
he's
he's
a
fine.
young man today. I guess soon to be married or whatever he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
If we could digress for just a minute. Now, I know when we first started talking about the case,
Yes.
I meant to ask, but I forgot. What is the reason that David
Oh, yes.
was possessed in the first place?
The reason David became possessed was because his mother and sister, unfortunately, were fooling around with witchcraft. They met a group of people in upstate New York while they were snowmobiling, and these people, from what we understand, were into satanic activities. Had them go back to their house that night, and for some reason, they turned on the mother. And when Debbie and Arne at home were looking for a rent, the first time that the beast made itself known was in this small house in Brookfield, where David said that something pushed him onto the bed, and he could see an old man. And the description was a very horrifying description.
Well, he said that, this is how he explained it. He explained that this man was standing there. He told about the plaid shirt the guy was wearing, told everything about the guy. But that night, what he could see in that house appeared in the Brookfield home, their own home. Only now, this little 11-year-old kid, this is how he put it, he was there again in my bedroom, but now he looked all burnt, and he had feet like a deer.
Hoofs.
Oh, boy. That's an amazing case. And for anyone who's interested in knowing a little bit more about the case,